Well, hi, it's Jamal again with another project on a Mini Cooper. Don't you love instructions like this? And this is it. I went to Mini Mania's website. They got a link that says instructions for installing. It's this. Let's see here. Assemble mounting blocks to bar just inside the blade lever arms with shortest end between mounting block and block ends, as tied up against the angle formed by the rear subframe immediately behind the set. Yeah. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, not a single drawing, diagram, or photo. Nice. We'll straighten it out. Got a few minutes? I'll show you how to put this on. Ta-da! The first step, they talk about a centralizing tab on the center of the rear crossmember of the rear subframe. They're talking about that little guy right there. That kind of gets in the way because the bar ends up sitting here, operating this way. My hand is in the picture. There's these 3 bolts that hold the rear hub that make up part of the rear swing arm, and you're going to use the top 2. You can see here I've already replaced these sides. Now this side I haven't touched yet. They say to take off the brake shoes or the hub. No. Easy to do, no need to disassemble the brakes. You just pop those out, you can get to the heads of them to hold them from turning. You can see these are already in place. You can see the heads of the bolts right in there, no problem. One quick thing to show, they say to add a washer in between of the mounting plate, this is the mounting plate they're referring to, and it's going to go like so, such that the threaded hole is here, rearward and uppermost, as they say, but that's what it's going to look like on there. And they say to add a flat washer to the uppermost bolt, the one hiding up there, and that's to allow for the same thickness as the parking brake cable bracket. Let's continue showing the highlights of the installation of the basic rear roll, or anti-roll bar, as they would say in England, sway bar, as we'd say here. While we were at it, the car was equipped with these sorts of big, thick wheel spacers. Now, these have been around forever, and they work, but they're tedious to deal with. These involve installing these sleeves over the existing lugs, and then having to line them up precisely so that they fit in these slots, which compromises how much you're going to torque them, and makes them very tedious to deal with if you've got to pull the drum off. We just thought, well, this car has been set up so nicely. Mini Mania sells these. They're called the value line version of the long available super fins. These are known as mini fins. And really they don't cost much more than having a drum turned, for goodness sakes, anymore. So built-in spacer. I went ahead and replaced these studs, just a more elegant solution. Let's take a look at the sway bar highlights here. Make some sense of these directions. We've installed the plates provided with the kit there. You can see those triangles on the rear swing arms, using 2 of the bolts of the 3 that hold the hub in place. The other bit of instructions that were kind of fun are what they call the void bushes. So now here we go. This is the little tube piece, of course, that provides the, suspension moves. You have to have some give, something such that the sway bar can rotate in its mounts, and this can provide, the effect of the anti-roll effect. In the instructions, there's one spot where they tell you to cut off one side only of one end only of the void bush so that it's flush with the tube. That's what they're talking about there, if you can see that part in my hand here. Leaving those 2 there. Now they say to put this side here, and figure out, well, it's not that tight a fit, but essentially it's going to hang right there. And a bolt will go through from here, from the side that we've cut off. And lo and behold, if it doesn't look just like this when it's installed. So that's obviously you're not putting it on tight. They tell you leave everything loose, and that makes sense. So you can install the bolt back this way, and that provides the movement to allow for suspension travel with the fixed sway bar, which is going to be fixed right back here somewhere. All right, continuing on, you can see here I've decided to add a washer here. The instructions don't say on the side that we cut off flush. It's just a cleaner install here. That bolt looks like if that void bushing slipped, the head of the bolt would fit into the tube. So me being detail oriented, we've added the washer. All right, there we are with the assembled drop link. You can see this 7mm spacer, bolt through the upper bushing, that threads into the plate we've installed up here. Start the bolt into the plate with the spacer, and again we're just going to leave this hand tight so that we can position the bar precisely. All this movement here will allow us. And really, once you get all those inside links positioned, and get the car at its standard ride height. You can see here I've shuffled things around and I've got the car sitting on these ramps. The weight of the car is on the wheels. And you can see this is set pretty low here with these high-lows and springs I just installed. And so if the car is raised up, your swing arms are not going to be at the ride height. And in the instructions they do say tighten everything up after the car is back on its wheels, otherwise you'll tear these bushings up. You can see that if you allow the wheels to droop a whole lot, it's going to put severe stress on what they call the void bushings. That part number is used in the gearbox of the Mini and the rod change linkage. So it's a common enough part, but you will tear it up if you subject it to excessive flexing inside that bushing, inside that drop link where they're tightened up. But you can see here, once all of that's positioned, the weight of the car is there. What I ended up doing here was positioning the bar, clamping the bar into one half of these, center punching a location I was very confident with, drilling that hole, then installing one side. And that allowed me to very precisely locate the second hole. You don't have much of a flange here. You don't want to miss and have to elongate a hole here. If you're too far in, if you try to finesse this and try to put these blocks right up against, even with the edge of the frame, your hole will go into the sheet metal inner brace. So you got to be careful here. You can't just go, well, it's prettier here, sure, but you can't get to the other side of the bolt. So you do have to kind of favor the outside edge, but allow just enough to get the washer and the nut on. Hey, look, I just had some food delivered. Thank you. Ooh, yum. All right, so now I've gone ahead and bolted it all up. These are honed and very precisely machined holes for this bar so that it can move. This is not a clamp. This is a locator. A standard bar would have a rubber bushing here where it went to the frame. So this is a pretty nice setup. This is not going to give any. It's going to rotate freely in there, and I put anti-seize inside of it. And this hose clamp here keeps it from, slightly moving side to side as things flex in there. It's very nicely centered right now, and all of the links up here have exactly the right spacing on the inside, the outside. They're exactly vertically oriented. And so we're pretty happy with this installation. All right, I'll stop shaking the camera. I think, the instructions do make sense when you crawl into the car, but hopefully this will make more sense to people before you start the job. And you can go, oh, yeah, not much to it. And you can see this subframe nice and straight, everything here. The bar is very nicely parallel to the rear cross member of the rear subframe. We'll show one more trick here when I have a moment, and then maybe in a separate video, because we mentioned briefly the risk of lifting the entire car and allowing the wheels to droop excessively, tearing up the bushing. When you jack one side to change a wheel, that sway bar is going to resist allowing one side to droop. You're going to be okay. But if you lift the whole car, the swing arms are going to come down and those bushings could end up torn up. I've got a trick which is effective with these springs. Right now these springs are set so low, if I raise this car up, they come loose. They don't quite fall out. The ones on my Cooper S over there could fall out. I used to do all sorts of tricks to keep those wheels from drooping when I raised that car up. Well, the sway bar is fully installed. Everything went together here nicely. I took my time and positioned everything as optimum as possible, and it should work exactly the way it's supposed to.